has there been any sort of breaking news or big developments, anything that you think we should know?
So Monday, after the British Touring Car finale, we had a livery reveal from Brisky Racing, who are working with Team Hard for their TCR UK entry. We had some videos revealed by some of the members of the TCR UK groups, where their VW Golf had a run out, or a shakedown, I should say, at Silverstone. The car was driven, I believe, by Richard Wheeler, who's the head of Brisky Racing, and it was also driven by Jake Hill as well, who's obviously knows.
I did see the pictures of him getting strapped into his thing.
So the team, as I understand plans, the team have confirmed they plan to run 3 VW Golfs in conjunction with Team Hard during the first ever TCR UK series next year. There's also been some high profile interest since we last spoke about it a couple of weeks back, where 2 big teams have mentioned they want to have a go potentially at TCR UK. One of them being West Coast Racing, a big team from Sweden, who have been a big part of the TCR International Series and have a lot of UK team members. So a TCR UK campaign is a possibility. It's something they're looking into. And also Craft Bamboo Racing, who have been a mainstay of TCR International Series, and as many fans will know, used to be part of the British Touring Car Championship as well as the World Touring Car Championship. Again, with being based both in Hong Kong currently and also at Silverstone. They're another team that's looking at the possibility of running cars in the TCR UK series, and also possibly, they're looking into it at the moment, moving away from running Seat Leons. Maybe they could be running different cars next year. There are a lot of cars out there to choose from, a lot of makes and models that are competitive and on an even keel.
It would say a lot, I think, if the big teams like Craft Bamboo, I consider them a massive team with their recent experience in World Touring Car Championships, and they're a team everybody knows and such and such. It would say a lot for them to come into TCR UK instead of, because obviously the option is, one would think, to get a TPL and go into the British Touring Car Championship, but that's kind of not really it
doesn't seem to be the plan, to be honest. They are. I mean, the report that came out over I think it was last week.
I mean, it would be significant of them to decide to come into the UK market once again and opt for TCR UK, a product that they already know about, can already, like you suggested previously, can take their cars around to various TCR championships in the world. Potentially,
it's the biggest selling point about TCR is the fact of you can race your cars in any championship. There is a general balance of performance in place for the cars that affects cars globally. It's not just series by series where adjustments are made. So the fact that Craft Bamboo are considering, I think it was a dual campaign, so they'd be taking part potentially in the international series and the UK series. Obviously, we're waiting for confirmations as we build up. But the fact of that you're able to do that, like I was saying, you have the possibility of renting out your cars to drivers in other domestic championships, or even taking those cars across from the TCR UK event and taking part in some of the European domestic series as well, or even having a wildcard in international series weekend, which is something that happens quite a bit at the same time. It is the beauty of TCR. It's customer racing, and it's also the fact that the cars on a level playing field, and you have so many series out there that you could go and drive in and have a chance of being competitive straight away.
I can definitely imagine that many big teams who have drivers or customers who might want to do the occasional one-off race, maybe at Spa, for example, just as a one-off, it would be better to do it to have the existing setup and the existing team, rather than, because I'm sure teams don't want their customers leaving to go to do basically what is essentially the same type of race with another team. Why not just do it with, it's so sort of interconnected, like you said. It's such a better product, better model, I suppose.
And to show the progress, like I said, this weekend is a quick sort of nod. You've got the penultimate round of TCR International Series. There is the brand new Hyundai cars taking place through BCR Motorsport. You've got two big names in Alain Menu and Gabriele Tarquini, who everyone knows. So however many times or however long you've watched touring car racing,
it's Tarquini.
Yes, it's Tarquini. The two of them, the two of them are racing the new Hyundais in China and also in Dubai as a final round. And then these cars, once they're fully homologated, will be on sale to teams to be used next year. You've got the Kia Ceed that's been out there being tested by Zengo Motorsport and being developed by Stard Racing as well. So again, you've got at least 6 or 7 makes of car. There's 9 or 10 models out there that are fully homologated, that once we've had the balance of performance in, I believe it's March next year, are freely available for teams to be to go ahead and buy. To chuck a few names in, Tom Coronel, who's a regular tin top driver in World Touring Cars and also has had a go at TCR. He's tested a Hyundai, and Dan Welch as well, who took part obviously last year with Welch Motorsport and recent years with the Proton. He tested the Hyundai in Valencia a few weeks back as well. So again, the possibilities are out there. It is growing. It's really exciting to see.
And one bit of news that I already sort of suggested would happen. I'm going to take the complete, utter, total credit for it happening.
Okay.
And I did sort of suggest it would happen on the last show when we were last talking about TCR UK. Phil, is that one of the potential support categories that I then imagined would be brilliant to have as a package, and that have subsequently come out and said yes, this is happening. Your
crystal ball worked, by the way.
Yes, because unbeknownst to you, I was telling Dan Marr and Phil Kinch behind the scenes, this is what's going to happen. I can sense it, and sometimes you can just sense these things happen. They didn't tell me beforehand, but yeah, the BRSCC Formula Ford 1600 Championship will be on the TCR UK package in 2017. Effectively, it would, I think it only needs the Fiestas and something else. And I said this to Dan Marr the other day. I think it would only need a couple of other things, and it would become the actual Toka package from about 2000. The same Toka package that was on Toka 2, the game, essentially. How amazing would that be?
That as well. That would be truly amazing. Like I say, as a lot of people know, Formula 4 1600, very competitive category
world famous
to sport. So at the same time, the Formula Ford Festival that takes place at the end of each year with the best of the best race of each other. So the fact that that's us as a support category to TCR UK says a lot. Again, can't wait to see it. Well, I'm personally hoping I'm going to be at least 2 events myself next year for TCR UK. So to be able to see the cars racing up close and seeing how good the racing is as well is something I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and we will try and, if we're allowed, we will try and get to some TCR UK and Formula 4 1600 events as well. Yeah, I suppose that's all we'll say. It's on our targets of lists of things to attend, but whether or not it happens, who knows? So you're tuned in to Monday Motorsport on a Tuesday on Motorsport Radio. My name is Lester. Hello, welcome to the show. We are currently in the midst of a touring car talk, sort of. Kind of. It kind of evolved from World Rallycross, and we started talking about TCR. And now, so we're going to eventually now talk about the BTCC, because that happened for the final time in 2017, and it might have been the final time in its glory era, which is now that regarding the, now that it currently doesn't have the TCR UK to battle against, it will be a threat.
I don't know about an end of a glory era. I will question that. There's at least a good few more years left in this.
Okay, maybe I was a bit premature in saying that.
Yeah,
but,
a little, yeah.
Now it can basically, it can say that for many, many years it's had the only top billing of a touring car series in the UK. I'm sure someone will probably correct me on that, but whatever.
Oh, yes. No, I'm just thinking and trying my best to at the moment.
Yeah, so anyway, touring cars happened, and Dan Marr, we have a new champion.
We do indeed. Ashley Sutton is the 2017 Dunlop MSA British Touring Car Champion. What a shame the way it was decided, but what a champion, what a year. It's been a fantastic season for him.
Why was that a shame?
For everyone, it's been a fantastic... Well, I mean, let's be honest. The fact that Colin Turkington had to retire from the final race...
Why put a negative spin on it, though?
Well, he
drove a brilliant campaign all season.
Yes, but how dare I, as a casual fan, just want to watch a fantastic race to see both of them fight it out for the championship, for the British Championship.
Felt like a world championship.
I was about to say world championship then. Yeah. Well, but you get the point. It would have been nice to have seen, it be decided, because Colin Turkington had started really well and was starting to fight, and you could sense that he was going to go on to big things in that race, but sadly the contact between himself, Tom Ingram and Matt Jackson put pay to that, which it did, without saying much, I felt it lost a little bit then, because, Ashley Sutton didn't have to fight for the championship in that race, unlike in previous seasons, like we saw last year with Sam Tordoff and Gordon Shedden, they both fought for the championship right to the very end, right to the last corner of the last lap. Obviously, it's a bit of a surreal experience when, David Addison goes onto the radio halfway through saying, Ashley, well done, you are British Touring Car Champion. And then Ashley turned around and say, well, it's not done yet. I've still got a job to do. I've still got to go out there and finish the race, which I think was quite a remarkable thing. Because I know some drivers will be, oh, my God, I'm so happy we got through this. Not noticing, there's still half a race left to go. It was a tremendous fight back from Colin Turkington, who had everything thrown at him over the course of the meeting, He was
very emotional after... I think it was the first race, wasn't it? Almost sort of bursting into tears.
Yeah, because, he, for the first time, he'd been on the back foot, but he could sense, maybe it could do. And Ashley Sutton felt like he lost his head between the first couple of races. And the team said they struggled to understand how they could get the best performance out of them. To use a football analogy, these moments are these are the big games. These are the big games and the big matches, and this is where the manager has to go, right, you got different approaches that he wasn't sure, or they weren't sure how to approach him to get the best performance out of him, but they did, and he did look an invigorated man. He looks a completely different man in the car, the way he'd driven the car over the course of the three races. In race 3, he was just completely on it, and it was fantastic, because it just felt like, hang on, this was like 2016 all over again, where Sam Tordoff had done so well up to the last meeting and then bottled it effectively and lost it on the last race. Luckily, Ashley Sutton didn't. It was a shame, like I say, it was a shame that the obviously the championship was decided the way it was, because, all touring car fans out there wanted to see it go down to the last lap. I would have preferred, to seen that. I mean, the semantics of racing aside, it would have been nice to see, but it's fantastic for Ashley Sutton. He is going to be a multiple British Touring Car Champion, but, I sense a bit like, is he going to end up maybe a bit like Jason Plato did, where he's only going to end up with 2 titles, but so many race victories and, dragging so many teams from positions where they shouldn't have been up to the top. We'll wait and see, but I think Ashley Sutton, he is a fantastic talent, but is he going to stay in the British Touring Cars? Because I think... And without trying to be too controversial, but going to be quite controversial, I think if he stayed in the British Championship for too long, it would be a detriment to him.
So he's off to TCR UK, is what you're saying?
Well, he said he wanted to do... No, genuinely, he came out and said he wanted to do TCR... If he could do TCR UK, he would be doing it. He said he'd be looking at the avenue and exploring every avenue to do it. I can imagine seeing him in TCR International and potentially in... Not World Touring Cars, I can't see him going to World Touring Cars, but TCR International will be something perfect for him, because... Let's be honest, he is such a fantastic talent, but he's conquered the British racing scene for the last few years. What can he do now? Where's his next challenge? Because he doesn't strike me, unlike the generation of Jason Plato and Matt Neal, who could afford to and have stayed in the British Touring Cars for 20, 25 odd years. They were paid or earned enough money to do it over the course of their careers, whereas now, especially with TCR UK coming in, the money simply is there. Half at the very least, buy their ways into the championship, which is why arguably we've not seen as strong a field as we could have done for several seasons now. But Ashley Sutton is someone who deserves, like Rob Huff, to actually earn a living from racing touring cars. He's good enough to do it. I mean, Rob Huff has come out and said he'd love to come and do it back, but it's got to pay him the money because, it's got to pay the bill somehow. And I think Ashley Sutton has got that capability and that talent to do it. It's just a question of, is he going to stay in the British touring cars next year? I certainly hope so. I imagine he will. He'll want to try and continue his fight. And then same, potentially, TCR UK, will he go over to that? TCR International Series. There's lots of options for him, but it's just a start for his career, We can't just sit here and say, he's, going to stay in the British touring cars for 20 odd years. It's a fantastic achievement what he's done, but he needs to move on, I think.
Well, Connor, do you think the newly crowned touring car champion needs to move on? Is he beyond BTCC? Is the touring cars, as we've known it now, dragging him down? And did you hope for more?
I will say I do agree with Dan in the sense that I do think he does need to move on. TCR UK, I don't think it's a very good idea if he wants to move on to that. International TCR would obviously be a lot better for him. But if he does want to move on, he's got a lot of routes ahead of him, and I'd be interested to see what he goes down. I mean, inevitably, he might say something like World Touring Cars or even DTM is a interesting possibility in the future. Obviously, there's very few links for that now, and I doubt that's going to be any sort of short-term move. But having beat such a class field towards the front, I mean, I know Dan said about BTCC maybe not having as class a field as it did 5-10 years ago, but I think it's fair to say people like Jason Plato, Gordon Shedden, even the second-rate drivers, Rob Austin, Tom Ingram, etc. They're a strong field, and they're drivers that it's not easy to beat. He's obviously beaten his teammate, a much more experienced driver, and this has really proven that it perhaps was a season he didn't expect to do that well, and has done an awful lot better than perhaps his own aspirations has said. Now, I don't know. Dan or Phil can put me out on when he said he wanted to race TCR, but I have a feeling if it was before he was a serious championship contender, that might have changed tack slightly. I wouldn't be surprised if this result at the end of the season has sort of changed his career somewhat, because I very much doubt he expected to win this title so early into his touring car career.
I can agree to that. I mean, he said, I believe it was a few months ago when he came out and said that he would be interested in TCR UK when it was first announced. He said he'd be interested in doing it. I think the way he hinted it, the way I interpreted it, is he suggested it would be a side thing as opposed to something serious. But that's what TCR UK is being designed for. It's not meant to rival the British Touring Car Championship. It's meant to not even supplement it. It's a support. It's there for people to do.
Yeah, but so they say. Phil will know that TCR is a big international brand in the same way that in GT racing you have things like
GT3 is the same. If you're going to make the British GT analogy, I understand what you're saying. I agree perfectly, but we'll see how it comes out. I can imagine I feel that it will be a side action for the likes of Ashley Sutton. Obviously, he's been in serious contention for some time now. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. We've watched his driving all season, and every time he's got into a car, he's just said, how can he do that? No one else in that Subaru can do that. How is he doing it? When Jason Pace, when they figured out, obviously, Jason's issue, which was with the drive shaft, wasn't it? So, and the differential side. So when they figured out, that's only going to help him. And he's just done fantastically all season long. I can imagine he might still want to do it. As you say, maybe he'll reconsider now he's won the championship. Obviously, everyone's been saying over the last few days that no one expected him to do quite so well. The only time I can remember he's done not great was in that season of Formula Ford. He did a long while ago, I think. And
a few years ago.
A few years ago.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's only been a few years since we remember him winning the Clio title, I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong. But
it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. It's not been long that he's pushed his way through. And for someone to have risen so quickly through the order, you've got to look at the career progression of people like Ivan Muller, Rob Huff, as you obviously said, and you look at where their career has taken them. And I don't know if Sutton, he might want to just become a national idol like Plato and Shedden have become over their time. But I don't think he's that sort of guy. He's not in that sort of mindset. He's probably already looking at the international scene. And I wouldn't blame him for looking at the international scene. He needs to go further on. Otherwise, you do just become very isolated within your own talent. Yeah, stagnant. I mean, we talk about Plato and Shedden and all that, and Turkington being the best of the British drivers, but how are they internationally? We've never really seen, well, apart from the odd one-off race, we've never really seen people like Plato race internationally and against the best of the world. And I'd love to see that. I'd love to see those guys of old take on the best in Europe, the best.
Well, he tried it, but it didn't exactly work out.
There have been one or two races, and I'm sure Phil will have a good analogy of what happened.
Yeah.
But
is it fair to say, Phil, he was a bit crap, Plato?
No.
Is that why he sort of focused back on his...
No, it's very fair to say Jason did very well. I think it was a 2004 European Touring Car Cup, I think.
Yeah, he did. Sorry, Phil. I'd say he did a couple of rounds in 2005, back when the World Touring Cars first became a thing. And let's be honest, the Toledo was not the car to have at that point. The car to have was the BMWs.
Jason's not fared very well. Like Dan said, the cars he had weren't a true reflection. So no, Jason's had a go. Matt Neal's had a go. These guys, whilst they're they are our biggest stars in the British Championship and known internationally as well. Their best time has been in the British Championship. I'll be honest, Dan sort of surprised me a little. I've missed the TCR UK bit from Ash Sutton, but my angle the entire year about Ash Sutton has been that he's been able. Last year he was in a front wheel drive MG and brought performances out of it that were very close to what Jason Plato was able to do when he was at MG. He's jumped into the Subaru, and as far as I'm aware in his career, it's the first time he's driven a rear-wheel drive touring car or rear-wheel drive car in general. I could be wrong. But again, he's been able to do things in that Subaru this season that Plato, Cole, Josh Price, okay, in his first season, fair enough. James Cole being a rear-wheel drive, more of a specialist, and has been able to do things. Ash has gotten into that car, taken pole positions, taken wins. He's been up front fighting with the best in the field. So my question for all year has been, what has he been able to extract from that car that the others haven't been able to? And it's that ability that has brought him into the championship, brought him to the championship as a contender, and ultimately brought him as a championship winner. At the start of the year, we were looking at Tom Ingram having a fantastic start to his season, and people going, hang on, this kid's going to be able to go for the title overall, and it genuinely looked that way. Colin Turkington being in the fight all the way from the beginning, even though he had the crash at Brands in the first round, and Gordon Shedden, again another championship contender, who during the season was able to be up front and fight for positions, fight for wins, and be a championship contender. By the time we've got to Brands, it's Turkington versus Sutton. They've both had their ups, they've both had their downs. I'll be honest, I was watching on Sunday and hoping, Colin, maybe he gets his third title. He drove his best. He's one of the best drivers in the championship. He's a very fair driver. I'm not going to go into the social media conversation that was taking place about his supposed driving tactics. We'll leave that to the fans to discuss and argue over.
Get them all banned. Shouldn't be allowed.
Exactly.
Stop it.
At the same time, it was also a situation was Colin drove his best. Ash had the advantage. He had the points advantage in every race. So effectively, it was a little easier on him, but the pressure was still very hard because it's his first ever chance at a title. So he's done very well. He's a very worthy champion. He's shown he's got the talent. My suspicion is that Warren Scott isn't going to let him go just yet. I'll be honest, I would be very surprised if Ash isn't back at Subaru next year alongside with Jason Plato. On the other hand, like Dan said, there is the opportunity, like a lot of drivers are looking for a dual campaign. We've discussed the calendar a few weeks back. There is the possibility that drivers can compete in both BTCC and TCR UK. It's also going to be a moneymaker or a money spinner even for a lot of the teams out there. So to have a guy like Ash Sutton go and drive for potentially a mid-range BTCC team in TCR UK, if that's what's happened, we obviously we're sort of guessing until we know what's going to happen to take place. The possibilities are there. The trouble I think we've had, like Connor was saying earlier, with Plato and Neil, established stars of the BTCC, there hasn't been the option of another tin top series in the UK for many a year for those drivers to go off and do. So it's basically been a case of, right, here is the BTCC, ply your trade. And Plato, Neil, Andrew Jordan, Gordon Shedden, these guys have done their very best. They've reached the top of their game. They are well respected. And as a lot of people, fans and social media alike, recognise the BTCC is potentially the best series, the best tin top series in the world, for its calibre of drivers, for its competition, and for pure spectacle. So
traditionally, it's been the only thing that it's had no competition, really, realistically.
Yes, there's not been anything out there.
So of course it's going to be the best.
The next step has either been go and take part in WTCC, which for a small time took, raced in the UK, but didn't prove to be a popular move for the championship, ironically, or to take part in European touring car series. It's why, like I said before, I applaud the decisions of people like Rob Huff, Andy Prio, and I'm going to go back as far as saying Steve Soper. These guys have gone and raced touring cars internationally when the opportunity's been there, and they've done it well, and they're out racing, with the best. So, the options are there. Like I said, I would be surprised if Ash is elsewhere. If he's not in a Subaru next year next to Jason Plato, I would be really surprised. I think, like we said, like Dan said, Ash is a racer. I'll be honest, I could see him sort of taking the Jason Plato trend. He sees a gap, he goes for it. He wants to win. So he is a racer at heart, as it's been widely recognised. I wouldn't be surprised if the offering of a potential second title in a car that will be in its third season of competition next year, isn't too tempting. So we'd have to see. But a worthy champion. Up against Colin Turkington, a very experienced driver himself, who has taken on the world's best himself and won races. It'd be very interesting to see what he decides to do.
Well, incidentally, going back to what was mentioned by Dan, and something I've been able to confirm, this is from the autosport.com. I don't know if he said it directly to them or it was a Motorsport Network affiliate, but Ash Sutton did basically confirm his interest in TCR, saying back in, I think, August, couple of months ago, a month and a half ago, he said that TCR, quote, seems to be working around the globe, but would, quote, struggle to surpass the Toka Run series in the UK, says Autosport. He also went on to say, quote from Ash Sutton, if somebody offered me a drive, I wouldn't let it take over what I do in the BTCC. If it was a sideline, then maybe, said Ash Sutton. So you might be right, Phil Kinch. He might be looking to combine or do maybe a part TCR UK or part TCR International or something like that alongside his touring car commitments, of which he is now a champion.
Yeah, it's a trend I'm not surprised. I think you're going to see a lot of next year, to be honest. You'll see drivers doing dual campaigns or part campaigns with TCR alongside BTCC. Again, a very interesting winter ahead for both series. One thing I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but my own personal opinions, and I'm not sure obviously where Dan and Connor are going to come from with this. I think it's possibly time to reduce the entries in British touring cars.
Yes, it is.
It's something that's been talked about, Dan, as you're aware as well. 32 car grids is great. It's a brilliant spectacle. The TBL system was brought in to make sure we have, high quality entries, high quality teams. Is
it just only great for the administration, i.e., more money? Because we don't. It's irrelevant for the TV viewers. all that will happen is as we've said in previous shows, is that there's more of a potential for more crashes and more controversy and more scandal and more nonsense to go on. Plus, we can only watch one bit of action at any time on the track. There's more stuff that we don't see.
No, I think it's a case of it may be a time to look at limiting how many entries the series has. Whilst it's been brilliant with the NGTC era, it's been having for the past few seasons 32 entries. You're seeing a lot of teams, that there are a lot more crashes. The driving standards has been a big topic this year, and it's something that obviously you can near enough guarantee Alan Gow and Topa are going to be looking at and reviewing and making decisions. As we discussed last time, there is the big meeting between himself and the team's representatives this month to discuss things like driving standards and how the series moves forward next year as well. I think it's something that's going to happen where they're going to say, look, let's start cutting down how many entries we have, how many TBLs are available. I wouldn't be even surprised if the number of TBLs, because obviously some teams have 3, some have 4, some have 2. I wouldn't be surprised if even the TBLs assigned to a team cuts down to, say, maybe just 2 cars per team. I'm guessing. I'm not certain, but it is something I think could be the next step with BTCC, where they limit the number of entries so you've got an even better quality grid of drivers and teams. And potentially, with the driving standards improving and ways to find that, having a smaller grid of cars. Let's be honest, the top 15 cars score points out of a grid of 32 cars. So half the field, if all of the cars finish, just over half the field miss out on points. I think you'd find a lot more of a fight taking place if you had, say, 26 entries, 24 entries, cutting the number down. I don't know, it's a guess, but I think it's something we could be seeing quite soon.
Well, let us know your views if you are tuned in live online to us here on Motorsport Radio. Is less more? Let us know. It's at M-Sport Radio on Twitter, where we are also streaming the show live and in glorious HD so far. Kind of, so yeah, is as Phil Kinch says, is less touring cars on the grid going to be better overall? Will that potentially mean that if they do cut the grid down to just 22 cars, then the remaining 10 cars might just all bugger off to TCR UK? Could happen. Where else would they go? But let us know your views, and is that something that is right for the championship? Let us know. We want to know, basically. Any views? Let us know. That's the main point. Martin Johnson's been on, and he's let us know. Thank you, Martin, and welcome to the show. He says he knows Ash well, and having raced with him online for many years, he says he will have grand plans for his future. As always, though, funding and offers will heavily dictate his future, but he has more than enough talent to do whatever he fancies turning his hand to, including maybe even potentially a new career as a grid girl. Potentially. Dear. For the radio listeners' benefit, there's a wonderful picture of Ash celebrating from social media pictures that were put online.
I can't believe you actually saved the picture.
Why wouldn't I? I'm not going to show the Jason Plato one. That's just just inappropriate.
No.
But yeah, Ash Sutton, a picture of him in a grid girl's outfit, let's say, and he may or may not have been slightly inebriated at that moment in time. But fair play to him. Champion of 2017 in touring cars, Dan Marr is less more, and is TCR. I think we've all kind of got it in our head now that it is that BTCC has to sort of do something extra special, which reminds me as well, before I'll let you answer those questions, I'm going to throw another one at you as well. Stuart Higgs of the British Superbike Championship fame, yes, the Alan Gow of Superbikes, effectively. He suggested that the touring cars should spice up the TV coverage by effectively not showing everything live. There's an oversaturation, he said, suggested, and I can't remember his exact words, so I'm going to have to paraphrase, but he said, Dan, that potentially just showing tighter edited highlights of race 1 and race 2 and then come into race 3 live, similar to what already happens in BSB. I think that might refocus a lot of people's attention and put more of an emphasis on, say, the third final race being the big race, as opposed to just having 7-hour slabs of TV where you can just have a bit of touring car fatigue. If that's a question.
Okay, so before I delve into all of that, less would certainly be more in terms of the British touring cars. We can get more quality entries, more quality drivers, more quality teams. If we just focused it a bit more, rather than spreading 32 out, and reducing the amount of TBLs potentially to 26 or 28, just thinning it out a little bit more gets rid of a bit of the clutter at the back, really, because then you just take away some of the more potential risk in the racing. Yes, well, you remove, obviously, the organisers will lose some of the revenue they get in from the quite substantial season entry fees they get, and as well as the TBL fees and all that. But if you did thin it out, we could see more quality go through, because people will pay more for the seats. Teams will be paying more to prepare cars to the higher order. We'll maybe get a bit less variety, but really, is that such an issue? It's an interesting one.
Not necessarily more quality. So go on. Yeah.
Just talk about TCRA briefly as well. Look at Josh Files, for example, going over to TCR Germany twice now, champion in TCR Germany. Josh Files never really made it up into the British touring cars. He only really got as far as the Clio Cup, Renault UK Clio Cup, before going over to TCR and smashing it twice. So we can see, there is a lot of people out there who can provide the best results. In terms of spicing up the show, in terms of edited highlights, I think some of that's ironic coming from Stuart Higgs, the British Superbikes, which enjoys almost identical coverage on Eurosport.
Not this season.
In terms of ITV.
Really? There has been, traditionally in the past, yes, it's been on all day and it's been a huge slab of programme. But this season, I think that they just come on and show either like two races and then they disappear off again.
It's slightly different.
Yeah. It's slightly different, but then let's look at it from another standpoint of, I'm not going to go into the argument, they should put the British touring cars on ITV1 because I want to watch it and everyone should watch it and enjoy it.
I'm glad you didn't say that.
Semantics aside, I genuinely think if they did place the British touring cars onto ITV1, for example, it could really boost the profile of the British touring cars, because you've got to search. For example, the Sky, the EPG number on Sky is 120, which will put it on the third page of the EPG when you're looking on all programmes on Sky. What happens if you just bang it onto ITV1? Even if you just say, have the edited highlights as an hour-long programme, edited highlights of race 1, 2, and then live race 3, but then you've got to account for some of the more gimmicky bits like the reverse grids and then the ballast, I understand, and the reverse grid you can sort of understand. But if you're going to do it as a product made specifically for TV, as Phil will understand for World Rallycross, you can't start introducing gimmicks and then making it this big extra special thing. You've got to make it as simple as possible before then making that the big headline event. And I think the British touring cars, yes, maybe they need to incentivise the teams a bit more, potentially with the amount of money they get from the prize pot at the end of the season, maybe, again, reducing some of the gimmicks. But, the British touring cars isn't fundamentally broken. We're talking about it as if it's broken. It's not broken. Obviously not. It's been working well for... No, it's not broken, and it's been working perfectly for 60-odd years, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. But if you're making suggestions, like, for example, Stuart Higgs has said, if we're going to do something like that, let's just go back to basics. Let's have 3 races. 3 races works perfectly. Have race 1, potentially, this is just my thought on that, reply to Stuart Higgs. Race 1 is results of qualifying. Race 2, the reverse grid race. And that sets that up for race 3, and that's the big all-out, let's go for this. Maybe make it longer, maybe make it worth more points. It's just something a bit like British Formula 3 does with a reverse grid race where that's worth, I think, less points, isn't it, Connor, as compared to the other two. You just need to do, again, if you're going to make it a program, a live program, you've got to tailor it to be live. the format doesn't naturally suit live television in itself because you've got a big block of the 7-hour footage, which I enjoy. I will quite happily sit through and watch 7 hours of motor racing. Yeah, plenty of people do. Yeah, several 100,000 or may, but you could potentially, if you focus it ever so slightly, could get millions on ITV1. Yeah. Sometimes you do need commercial risk, and this is, I feel, where the coverage of Formula E really faltered, is because ITV were never really prepared to take the commercial risk. And yet, something like the British Touring Cars, if you made it ever so slightly more tailored for live coverage, it could be back as massive as it was on Grandstand. There was a reason why the format worked.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have an opinion.
Connor, before you impart your opinion, though, I just wanted to touch on something that Dan said regarding us all apparently being plebs, and that we need 7 hours just to understand all the intricacies.
Hang on, again. Right, so do you remember the conversation we had earlier about you twisting people's words?
Nope. No, literally, you never said that. Anyway, but apparently, yes, we need 7 hours because touring cars, the BTCC, is so unbelievably complicated, and
no,
we're all.
All I said was that the current format does not suit a shorter show at the moment. Obviously, you got the highlights reels, but it doesn't currently suit the format itself. Doesn't suit a full live coverage, but as what Stuart Higgs suggested, tailoring the format ever so slightly, you could make it much easier to put into a 1 hour block. It then makes it much more easy to be consumed on live television. There's a difference between the format being complicated and the format not being as good for television viewing. There's a difference. Formula One is not great for watching on live television because it takes up so much time in an end user's day, but using 3 touring car races into an hour is perfectly doable. We see that with British Superbikes.
Yeah.
Anyway, Connor, thank you for your view, Dan. Sorry, I wasn't. I was very, very dismissive of that. Sorry, I didn't mean to sound that. But sorry, yes, Connor started off and I interrupted him. Go.
Yes, I will say I do partially agree with Dan in the sense that the current format does not fit live television, but the format they have, the 7 hours, works for touring cars because that 7 hours is not dedicated just to touring cars. It's dedicated also to the support series that comes along with the touring cars. And during this time, they get their coverage. This is where they get the exposure. And for a lot of them, it's what drives them into the championship. It's the whole reason TOCA is one of the, if arguably the top category that support series try to get to in the UK, because the TV coverage is there for them. If you put it on ITV1, you have to pick a dedicated time slot. In the same way that in a Formula One meeting, nothing matters. The Formula One has to go on the correct time. Support series don't matter. Support series can change their time all they like. And GP2 and GP3 have seen that multiple times over the years, but nothing must replace the Formula One.
Would it be a travesty, for example, to pick a highlight race, a standout race like the main race of a touring car weekend, and just have everything else revolve around that, like Formula One, like you suggest?
Maybe, but the highlight race would have to be the end race, as Dan suggested. But to do that, you have to have everything to run smoothly throughout the day. That's hardly ever going to happen, and there's always going to be a delay. And if you're running it on ITV1, there's arguably going to be limited space and limited time that you can run this, and how much you can push it back, as it were. Now, obviously, you're not going to push it back too much. There's a limited amount of time circuits are open, and I know touring cars do race up until usually about 6 o'clock when there is a 6:30 curfew. So they're never really going to be any more than half an hour behind necessarily. But if you are going to put it on ITV1, you've effectively got to have to kill off one of the support series in order so that there's more time and more flexibility throughout the day. So that they can have that live race at the end of the day for touring cars. I mean, you talk about lengthening the race. That surely just backs up the whole theory of, well, you've got to chop something's got to go. And so the format they've got now works well with the TOCA package. And that's the point. The 7 hours of TV is not for the touring cars. The 7 hours of TV is for the TOCA package. If you want live coverage on ITV1, then you've got to say British Touring Cars takes full priority, and that has to be the main game. And for that, you've really got to start chopping at least one of the support series. And I can bet you a load of the others will start to lose a bit of interest if they're going to be constantly put to the sidelines.
But if TCR are going to be, as me and Phil think, or perhaps just me, think that it will be a real threat to the BTCC, then surely it's going to suffer anyway.
There's...
Sorry, Phil, go on.
I've got a slightly... I've almost got a slam dunk, to be honest, for a way that BTCC can improve. It's something the fans have been screaming for years. Live qualifying. It's quite simply, a lot of the fans want live qualifying of BTCC rounds. Now, okay, you've only got, I think it's 30 minutes qualifying session. But
it is live.
It's kind of a nothing, though. I mean, qualifying. It just affects...
say live qualifying on TV, not internet. Okay. So not streaming live, which is live. Yes, it's streamed on the internet. But I think there's something a lot of the fans have wanted is it to actually be live on a Saturday afternoon on ITV4. That potentially could get more viewers, more ratings. Okay, yes, everyone's playing football or tennis or rugby or whatever else on a Saturday, but it worked. Okay, it worked for Formula One because that's a headline act, qualifying on a Saturday, race on a Sunday. It could be something that helps improve the show even more than what it is. And like Connor says, the 7 hours on a Sunday is to include a Toka package. It's to give the support races, the live coverage that they also deserve as well. They spoke to Murray Walker on Sunday, and he said, he used to have to edit the highlights as it was on Grandstand to try and make things look live. It worked back then, but now, BTCC isn't just BTCC. It's the headline act of an entire, weekend's worth of action for 4 or 5 extra series. So it's, live qualifying on TV, it's something that's probably going to get a lot of the fans involved and sort of agree that, yes, that would be more of a draw.
But has that model of even TV, has it moved now? Because even so much of live TV, it either has to be a world famous thing like Formula One. Touring cars qualifying at like
not going to draw.
It's not going to ever happen.
As Lester suggests, sorry to interject there, Lester, but as you suggested, it's not anywhere near worthwhile. I'm afraid to say it's not anywhere near worthwhile. And I'm a big touring car fan, as we all know, but it's nowhere near worthwhile enough for ITV4, who, bearing in mind, just last year spent millions of pounds on the horse racing highlights, are going to cut that for half an hour to go and watch some tin-top racing cars going around various circuits in Britain. It's not going to draw the numbers. It's not going to draw the advertising revenue. And ultimately, that's where it comes down to, is it worth it for ITV? Because, what am I going to say? Does ITV need touring cars and a Toka package, or does the Toka package and touring cars need ITV? I'm just going to put that there. So
it's interesting.
Which is why.
Sorry, go on, Connor.
If I may try and pull it back to one of the points we were saying earlier about the 32-car grid, you're talking about necessarily chopping the field, as in putting a limitation on the field. If touring cars really want to compete against TCR, is it really a good idea to tell them to chop the field, chop the amount of people that are going to give them revenue? Obviously, there's less footage then for the ITV. And you say, you're just going to get rid of the back markers, it'll be fine. But you're not going to get rid of the back markers, let's be honest. You're going to get rid of who pays the least, and that's going to be the up-and-coming young talent who wants to try and get into touring cars and will try and get together with a small team, but doesn't necessarily have the funds to pay for a whole season anyway.
Or some of the big names who teams might have took a bit of a gamble on, allowed them to pay a bit less to get into touring cars in the hope that sponsors would come on board because it's a big name and meet the cost and blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. If you're starting to chop the field, the people who are going are not going to be, and perhaps I'm going to be calling a few guys out here, but they're not going to be Jake Hill, Chris Smiley, Matt Simpson necessarily. They're going to be the guys who finished 8th, 9th, 10th, who are moderately talented but not enough to win people the championships. And those are going to be the guys who are going to suffer. And those are going to be the guys who are going to end up going to TCR. And
what's wrong with that?
TCR says, Yeah, but if TCR are saying, we're not going to rival British touring cars, but they're going to take a lot of the big talent from touring cars, people are going to go across.
Yeah, we decide whether it's a rival or not. The championship, I mean, TCR have already said, we're not going to be a rival. Touring cars have already said, they're not going to be a rival. Guys, we will decide whether TCR UK is successful, not you, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm sorry to drag it to single-seaters, but Formula E is successful these last couple of years because the fans are interested in it. The whole reason Formula E is taken off in such a way is not because it's an international single-seater series. I mean, 3.5 has failed, Auto GP failed. A lot of, the one that we mixed with football teams, that was hilarious.
Super League Formula.
Super League Formula.
Oh, yes. That amazing series. Yeah, that was a failure, let's be honest. Because they didn't bring in the fans. And if TCR are going to bring in the fans, you talk about Toka needing ITV. ITV might go to TCR and go, well, you've got the package, you've got the entertainment, we'll give you the hours.
And TCR have got Formula Ford 1600 as well. For example. Which, by the way, I should add as well, we might have a bit of early driver news as well, from a driver who's tuned into this very program as well.
Oh, wow.
I might as well say it because he said it publicly on the comments section. But this year's Junior Saloon Touring Car Saloon JSCC, Liam Thompson,
the junior.
But Liam Thompson tuned in, and friend of Motorsport Radio, is looking for drives at the moment, and he was asking earlier on our comments section of the Facebook stream, is Formula 4 1600 going to be on the package? Go on.
I feel a lawsuit coming.
And Dan confirmed, yes, it is. And I chipped in and asked him, well, are you interested, Liam, in Formula 4 1600? And he said, yeah, he's looking at it, which to me puts two and two together. I mean, it could even happen. Liam might even be racing in Formula 4 1600 next season, so that'll be good to see. So yeah, rather than go back home and maybe racing in something else in down under, which is where he's from, I think. Anyway, sorry, carry on. What was you saying? You were saying something? I don't know. I think that brought.
You interrupted at the end.
Yes, I did. Sorry, I was getting a little flustered because I knocked my microphone a little bit. Formula 4 1600, TCR UK, great package together if they have live TV. Providing they have live TV, and only we will decide championships whether you're a success or not, i.e. the internet. So bear that in mind.
And the people.
Says less to the guy that constantly complains about people on the internet.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And then becomes a person on the internet, and then gets banned because he's a person on the internet.